Hey guys, so starting a bit later, but I'm still doing this. Getting going live here. I kind of sitting down here today with this one here. And today what we're gonna be talking about is gonna be a little bit about injuries and the mental aspect of it. So little story behind this is yesterday I was actually regular day and my little one over here had to be taken to the vet because she was in a lot of pain and she was crying and all this stuff. So turns out, long story short, that she had a slip disc on her neck, like right below her neck, right where like spine meets the neck. And as I was going over there and hearing her in pain and all that stuff, I was very emotional. It was very it was painful seeing her like that, right? To be told, I was actually not probably at the best, but of my of like my feelings. It was very emotional. It was very hard to see, mostly because it was something that I had no idea what she was feeling. I could not relate. I didn't know what was going on, and I only knew that she was in pain. And then so that made me kind of remember this thing that we often forget, and that is how much of a mental aspect or a mental factor it has when we talk about an injury, not just on the person themselves suffering, but on the people around them, and how often we forget about that, right? So before I even talk about this, I just want to clarify that I'm definitely not an expert on psychology, not an expert in sports psychology. I'm a trainer, and by no means am I, or any trainer other out there, is qualified to diagnose any kind of pain you would have or any kind of injury you might have. If you feel any kind of pain or anything, please go see a doctor and go see a professional in that field. Don't go to your personal trainer to figure out whether you have something that might be in pain. We're not really qualified for that. So I'm just kind of want to say that at first, and just remember that qualified for movement and qualified for teaching how to move and teaching how to deal with certain positions and reteach patterns and reteach movement and helping someone feel safe in that aspect in their bodies is not the same as knowing exactly how much pain you might be in or what is the root cause of your pain. There's a lot of things that we're taught to deal with as a means of biomechanics and all the science behind it, and there are things that we are not qualified really to do, and you should see a doctor for that, see a professional for that. So having said that, I think hopping on this, a lot of times what we forget is how physical pain is a trauma. I'm with a trauma saying that it's not just physical, but any trauma is also gonna be mental, right? It's like our mind's perception of pain and the relation that we create with pain. It's going to be always relative to us, always subjective to us, but it's going to be always associated with an event, a moment, a movement that our bodies might feel all of a sudden unsafe in. And I say unsafe because it's very important that we kind of address three, and that's kind of what we're going to focus today on, is the three things that create this mental stress, this trauma, this PTSD, essentially, form of PTSD from that you might feel, and this feeling of unsafety, of feeling unsafe in your body, feeling unsafe in a movement, feeling unsafe in an event. This heavy stress that you impart on your body, on yourself, that also affects, as we all know, your mind, right? Your mental health. So heavy stressor factors on that. And then the emotional aspect of things. When you all of a sudden feel unsafe, you will increase how stressed you are, cortisol level, all that. You will increase how your body's gonna feel all of a sudden tense, and you might even be blinded in how you think about things, or not be really logical about certain kind of things, be more driven by emotion rather than by logic. So emotional aspects emotional decisions become very common when we talk about the mental side of an injury. So let's kind of talk first about this feeling of not being safe. Uh, and I say that because I think the first thing as professionals, or like myself, and this is looking at experience, me dealing with myself, me dealing with training other people, and then also like just looking at, and there's a lot of data in this that we've looked at in case studies on this feeling of unsafety, feeling that you in your body you're no longer comfortable, don't feel safe, feel yeah, uncomfortable, right? And I think we first have to deal with that. I think the very first step is dealing with creating an environment and a context of safety for yourself again, or for the person that's injured. Um, on the trainer side, it means be able to relate to the person, be able to create a form of connection, a relatedness to it, right? The ability to listen. You should be able to listen to this person, to whoever is in front of you that's in pain, because if you don't listen, you're not gonna be able to really understand where they're coming from, why it is that they're creating this, what is it they feel, what they feel at this moment when they move in certain ways, or why, what shuts down, or what is happening really internally, subjectively for them. Um, what might be painful for you is not going to be the same for them. So it's your ability to be able to listen to them and understand that they are coming from another place in another context, and be able to stabilize that or level it in a way that now they feel grounded and safe. Creating that level and that feeling of safety again is enormous. It's huge. It's a huge first step. Um, for you to be able to find what motivates them again, right? If you feel unsafe, you're not gonna want to do anything. But now all of a sudden, when you feel safe, you feel comfortable again. You start being motivated and doing things again in certain ways. It's like, imagine you're touching like really hot water. You have your first sip of coffee and it's burns your tongue. You're not gonna want to go right immediately into it, right? But all of a sudden, you start feeling safe again after you let it kind of pass. After you see that it's gonna cool down a little bit, you try it again, and now it's good to take. Now it's good to drink. So now you're gonna be able to get into that and start savoring your coffee. So, and you're obviously even more motivated to drink it. So so it's a kind of again finding that place, that zone where this person that you're dealing with, or yourself even, feel safe again, so you can start to take steps to move forward. You're motivated to get out of that place. And with that, it's finding a structure, right? A progressive structure that has goals that align with your ability to take on demand, right? Your capability of receiving and going through and passing all the demand that goes on you. So if you're not capable, if you overload somebody, what's going to happen is that feeling of unsafety is going to come back again, and all the progress will be shut down and go back. And they enter this moment, this feeling, or like this area of shutting down, and now it's regressing rather than moving forward. Or it's a moment that you just can't get out of that again, right? So feeling of safety and creating that safe place again and context for somebody, I think is one of the first pivotal places that we need to start. Again, structure, a solid structure with progress that understands the capabilities that you have as a person of taking on demand. How much demand can you take so you can keep moving forward little by little? And really, it's basically, we look at it in a more movement way. We're talking about a mental re-pattering, right? We're talking about, if you were injured, you probably moved certain ways, you probably did things in a certain way that your body got used to, and that your body, even, let's say, started bothering you a little bit. Let's say you got like a little bit of a pain on the ankle or toe. Well, you're gonna start moving a little differently to avoid that pain, to bypass that pain, to still be efficient in how you move without really exerting the pain. So when we talk about creating that safe place again, we have to also address the fact that we are teaching your body again to go through that pattern and to avoid the other pattern that we did, because we created a pattern that perhaps avoided our the way we actually move in order to bypass any pain. And so we have to teach our bodies to forget that movement and relearn the proper pattern, the proper way of moving, the proper way of stepping, using your toe again, and feeling comfortable using it again. And that the biggest thing with that is mentally teaching your body and mentally sending the signals, and neurologically speaking, being able to coordinate and correlate your body with your mind, and the way you use that part of your body with how you feel. So it's the small wins, right? So if we're talking about all of a sudden somebody's hurting the toe, and then you are able to address a little bit of that toe, able to address a little bit of that feeling and get them to feel safe, even if it's not a full pressure on the toe, but able to use and start developing that feeling for it, it's a small win that might not feel like a lot, but it's a small win that we want to take on and collect it. Because I think in this first phase of feeling safe again is about collecting successes. And collecting the small successes will eventually lead to a much bigger phase, right? So I think we focus on collecting successes in order to create a safe environment for them. And then the next thing we're going to talk about as we move through is the stress factor, the stress management that we're talking about for the individual. Probably one of the best ways to kind of assess that or to mitigate some of that will be as easy as being a little more mindful. But by that I mean meditating, calming down, being able to turn off everything that is around you that might stress you out. Because if you're coming from a stress environment already, and then you add more to that and more to that, it's gonna be very difficult to get out of that. So being able to try to relax throughout your day, before you work out, before you address certain things, I think that's going to be a huge, I believe that has a lot of power in how you start to address this and how start moving through your rehabilitation. Because you got to remember that as we go through an injury or rehab, you're not only filled with the pain, but there's all these stresses attached to it: anxiety, depression. So if you start becoming anxious, depressed, frustrated with yourself, you start to blame yourself. You start to create this negative energy, negative attitude, and so they get discouraged. And with discouragement comes discontinuation, lack of motivation, and then you just all of a sudden, that's when we get either more harm done to the body, a slow progress, or just completely done with the whole progress, right? So we don't want that to happen, and for that we have to be able to find a way to lower down that stress, be able to find a way that we can take away some of that stress, mitigate it, and even lower it as much as possible in the equation. People heal in different ways, and because people heal differently, that means also that people manage stress differently. So we have to be very understanding of that. What you might find easy for you to handle might be somebody else's way to handle something else, right? That might be much more difficult for somebody to handle perhaps their stress versus yours. And so we, as practitioners, or as you as an individual, you have to recognize, how do you manage stress? What is the best strategy for you to do that? And if listening to meditation is one of them, then we want to really use that and exploit that in a way. If it is reading books, if it is going for a walk, if it is being outside, if it is with friends, something that might bring you down, that's what we want to kind of use and get the most out of that, so that we can manage the stress levels and bring them down and bring you into a place where you're more parasympathetic, where you are more calm, where you are more accepting of what's happening, and you still maintain that motivation to continue, right? I think one of the biggest mistakes that we hear, that we see in this is the progress too quickly, right? Overworking. Because when we look at how you're rehabbing, you're constantly putting stress to your body now. that feeling of like going and working. It's not easy when you're in rehab. Rehab sucks. If you've ever gone through rehab, it sucks and it's terrible and it's very difficult and it's very mentally challenging and physically challenging. But if we progress too quickly, all of a sudden we start putting more pressure on ourselves. We are no longer patient, and we are adding more to that stress, overworking the body, and then going back to the feeling of safety. So now we start losing that environment in which we owned. We feel uncomfortable again, and then we regress into shutting down, into not progressing, into discouraging, into frustration, and so on and so forth. So one way that I see that's very, very convenient to remember here is, again, you're gonna heal differently. You're gonna manage stress differently. So find a way that you can do that better. And one of the greatest ways to do that is be actively involved in the decisions that are being made, or the decisions that you're taking or your practitioner taking. If we can work together, it is, I mean, you are, as a professional, even myself as a trainer, I have a plan. We create a plan, but we create a plan based on what your timeline is and based on what you're capable of doing and what you can do. And I think getting involved with the other person is important, because now they are also being part of this progress. Now they're also helping dictate what the targets are, what the goals are going to be. And they're helping shape the environment in which they are going to be in. So if you are more involved in this environment that you feel the more comfortable you're going to be in this environment. You make your home, right? You put whatever is around your home because you love that, because you feel comfortable around that. So now if we get this person involved in creating this context and this environment that is familiar to them, they're going to feel much more comfortable. They're going to feel better. They're going to be able to create adaptations a lot quicker, and so move forward in what we're trying to do. The last thing we want to look at is your emotional control, right? And I think this one is very, very, very touchy. And it's, again, all of this is very subjective, we really think about it, but this one in more so than others. And that is because emotionally we are all different. How we manage that, how in touch we are with our emotions, so how much control we are able to have with our emotions, how well we control our emotions. And I think that's the biggest and the biggest hurdle to get, and I think that's the last one that we want to tackle, because it's the most fragile, let's just say. But I think if we keep it simple, and if you don't overthink about what this might be, I think that's going to be probably one of the best strategies to do as practitioners and as individuals. Just remember that ultimately we are humans. And I think this particular phase of a rehabilitation, or particular aspect or component of a rehab, is not so much about creating a plan or so much about doing all these things, or about like a perfect formula, but about remembering that you are humans and you're both human beings, and we are we're beings that look to connect, and we are beings that thrive on connection and thrive on one-on-one interactions and thrive on that kind of support, right? Social support. And I think that becomes what drives here. So when it comes to the emotional component of rehab, I like to think of it as the support that you can have around yourself. The support system, whether it's social support, whether it's support of your trainer, professionals, your team, family, friends, the acceptance that they have for you in where you are, and your own acceptance, and that kind of nurturing your own acceptance of where you are. Because what we do a lot of times during rehab is we compare ourselves to a previous self, right? A pre-injury self. And we try to do all the things that we did before, but we have to remember that we are at this particular moment, at that particular moment, we are not the same person. We are not the same pre-injury self. When we're in the middle of a rehab, we are our bodies are different. We are moving differently. We are feeling differently. We perceive things differently. And I think our connection and our awareness of that becomes huge. um, and it's almost like an opportunity to get to know yourself as you are now, right? Accept yourself as you are now, and with that, creating the opportunity to become better and stronger than where you were before. So you are no longer comparing yourself to that, but now you are aiming for something new. You're aiming for a new version, or a new a way of moving, or a new way of approaching certain events that are more aware, and that, if done well, um, will turn out to be better, will become more efficient, will be stronger, right? So, listening, and again, connecting, and reminding yourself of your value, or if your friends, or anything, reminding that person or the individual of their value as they are now, and their value as what they can be and where they are aiming to be. It's important. It's what more of an emotional support will do, and more of developing this emotional resilience, and with that, the physical resilience that you're looking for. So in the emotional phase, most of the things that I see happening is the simplest mistake that I see is when we compare ourselves to our previous self, and create this guilt of failure, this feeling that we have failed ourselves and we have failed somebody else, which can play with our minds. It's mostly mental, and half the times that is us in our own minds, in our own heads, feeling like we have failed someone, whoever. When in reality, what we're doing we're doing this for ourselves. Most of the times, what we're doing as athletes is we're doing this because it's our passion, because it's what we like to do. So we are our own critics. Sorry, we are our own critics, and our worst critics at that. So falling under that perception of ourselves allows for this emotional instability to settle, and to take on, and to, again, fall back into ideas of depression, fall back into ideas of self-worth, not so much like not not keeping our self-worth to what it is, not valuing ourselves as how we are, and not wanting to continue, and not finding the value in continuing what we're doing, right? So the best way that I find myself doing this is remembering that when it comes to emotional aspect of rehabilitation, we're talking about developing emotional resilience, which will in turn push and drive motivation and physical progression, right? And I think that's it. So I gotta work better on this endings, but when we deal with when we talk about the mental aspect of an injury, there is not one perfect formula, and there is not one perfect way of dealing with it. We have to try, we have to recognize, we have to listen, we have to adjust, just like we do with everything else. But in my experience, and this is my opinion now, the biggest win we can have, and the biggest asset we can be for somebody else and for ourselves, is to remember that we are, again, human beings, and we are looking to connect. So listen to your body, listen to others, to their perspective, listen to where they're coming from, and build an environment for yourself, or build an environment for the individual that you're working with, of safety and of success, right? Celebrate the small wins, support each other, and recognize that you will heal at your own pace. So don't put too much pressure on yourself. Be kind to yourself. If you have any questions, anything like that, I hope this helped a little bit. Again, not getting too much in the weeds of it, but very short, kind of quick topic. We'll talk about this a little bit later. I think I'm gonna take this a little bit more and build on it, but for now we're gonna keep it here, and I hope this helps somebody out there. I hope this helps one person out there, or two or three, or whoever. And if you know of somebody that might be going through rehab, or might need to hear some of this, or might need a little reminder that it's okay where they are and that it's a long process, but it's worth it, please share this with them. And I hope you're all staying safe out there. Keep moving, keep working. See you guys next week. Take it easy.